Okay, AOC finally responded proudly concerning a high school yearbook photo that proves she grew up in a wealthy suburb. She said, "See, I told you I went to high school."
And I can tell you, I know that when I was waitressing and struggling to put food on the table, for a while there, I did. I tried to stop caring. I tried to just keep my head down, work my shifts, and accept that this is just how things are. But that is no way to live, Arizona. It's no way to live. What I do know is that we don't have to live like this. And in fact, we cannot live like this anymore.
This is ridiculous.
Gutfeld and Kelly didn't just push back on AOC's political act. They sliced straight through it with sharp humor and bold precision. They exposed every layer of her dramatic posing, her camera-ready moral moments, and the theatrical style she's leaned on for years. From emotional TikTok scenes to big economic ideas that never quite land, nothing slipped through untouched. This roast wasn't just strong. It felt like watching AOC's polished image crack right in front of everyone. And for anyone expecting her to answer with force, the shock hit hard because this takedown left her silent, overwhelmed, and completely exposed for all to see.
This nonsense from like AOC that he should be impeached is just absurd. Absurd. There's no... Okay, get back to me when you've read the Constitution or get a law degree, because you sound like an... There is absolutely no ground to impeach the president. He 100% was within his constitutional authority and his congressionally authorized authority to do what he did on Saturday.
AOC. What? She's kind of fun in a silly but earnest, wrong but adorable way. She's like your daughter when she comes back from her first year at Brown, full of half-baked, half opinions, in need of some gentle, patient deprogramming. But people have to realize new faces doesn't mean new ideas. Drives me crazy. AOC has never introduced a fresh idea or issue in her life.
Greg Gutfeld didn't need a moment of preparation before diving straight into his roast of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Just hearing her name seemed to ignite an instant wave of comedy in his mind. He snapped into full energy right away, almost as if he'd been handed a stack of jokes labeled endless material, and he couldn't wait to use them. To him, AOC wasn't just a member of Congress. She was an ongoing sketch routine, a walking set of punchlines who somehow stepped into political office and forgot to switch off the imaginary laugh track trailing behind her.
She's like an 80-year-old leftist in a used bookstore. I mean, she may look fresh, but she's as stale as an abandoned futon on the street. It's like, I listen to her, I go, I heard that at Berkeley in 1983. So their problem is, and the reason why they don't have any ideas is they operate on half opinions. Like, what?
He began by pointing out her unusual ability to turn every Instagram live into something that looked like a national address aimed at her cats and her glowing ring lights. Greg joked that AOC could sit with seasoned experts and still leave with a handful of half-grasped buzzwords that sounded impressive but never fully connected. He said her opinions felt like reheated leftovers from an old college activism rally, warm enough to seem political, but never solid enough to take seriously. It was his way of showing how her dramatic style often overshadowed the shaky substance beneath it.
So by now you heard that AOC, among others, were arrested last night. She truly is an American hero. It was brutal, taken out in cuffs. Well, technically, her shirt had cuffs. Maybe French cuffs, as she did surrender without fighting.
Greg then went after her love of theatrics, saying AOC walked through Capitol Hill like it was a spotlight runway and treated even the tiniest disagreement as a chance for a full televised meltdown. He joked that she handled legislation the way a reality show contestant tackles a chaotic group challenge, loud, confused, and convinced she's the fearless star even as everything around her collapses like a staged kitchen disaster. His roast painted her as someone always ready for drama, even when the moment didn't call for it.
As for whether it's a good idea, that's a debate we should be having. And look, if we could get congressional approval of the specific action, fine, I'm okay with that too. If you want to bring it to Congress, go ahead and see how that goes. I don't think it's necessary, but
Next came the part where he tore into her policy ideas, and Greg jumped in with clear enthusiasm. He dismantled AOC's biggest proposals, describing them as a mix of dreamy fantasy and economic self-harm bundled together. He laughed at how the Green New Deal read like a rushed 7th grade science project. Glitter on the outside, but missing every real number needed to hold it up. Greg compared her policymaking to assembling IKEA furniture without instructions, then blaming the chair when it collapses in dramatic fashion. His point was simple. The performance was loud, but the details were nowhere in sight.
Oh, let's do it. What happens? You have repeat criminals wreaking havoc. What if we have sanctuary cities? Hey, let's do it. What happens? Finding sanctuary, safe haven. What if we give trans rights? Oh, you just ruin women's sports. You ruin safe spaces. You make kids' lives hell. But
Greg also targeted her relentless social media presence, saying AOC spent more time filming videos than a full-time influencer who never clocks out, but with the added twist of avoiding solid facts while doing it. He imagined her staff meetings as chaotic scenes filled with filters, slogans, and someone dramatically shouting about carbon emissions while taking selfies inside an SUV, making the whole operation look more like staged entertainment than actual political work. Then came the tears, which Greg didn't ignore, describing how AOC turned every vote she disliked into a full Shakespeare-style tragedy, complete with trembling pauses and lighting arranged for dramatic effect. In his view, if she didn't get the result she wanted, it wasn't treated like a normal disagreement. It became a world-ending event staged for attention. Meanwhile, Megyn Kelly delivered a calmer but far sharper critique, peeling back AOC's public image layer by layer, like an onion that grew more tear-inducing the more it opened. Megyn challenged the illusion of AOC's intellect, noting how she delivered partially formed talking points with the confidence of someone who skimmed a quick summary and mistook it for expertise, producing emotional speeches missing the structure expected from a serious political figure.
There's a beautiful little town called Yorktown Heights in Westchester. It's not the fanciest of Westchester towns, but it ain't the Bronx by any measure. And the reason this is relevant is because a congresswoman who you may know as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has been telling us for years that she is from the Bronx. And recently she had a fight with President Trump over tweet, text, truth, whatever. And she played tough and said, "Oh, don't you mess with me. I'm a Bronx girl. And we eat Queens boys for breakfast."
Megyn continued by calling out AOC's habit of using moral outrage instead of real data, explaining how AOC treated every disagreement not as a normal difference in views, but as proof that someone must be a villain in her dramatic version of reality. Megyn pointed out that the world doesn't run on comic book scripts, yet AOC acted as if she never noticed, likely because she was too busy staging another protest inside her office. Megyn then shifted to AOC's performance-style politics, saying AOC didn't focus on legislation. She live-streamed and she didn't debate. She performed, entering Congress as if she arrived with a pre-written script, a spotlight, and a plan centered on collecting likes. She said AOC treated press conferences like audition tapes for a role that only existed in her imagination. Megyn also questioned AOC's environmental messaging, asking how someone so determined to save the planet could fly often enough to rack up travel miles like a touring DJ. She mocked how AOC's climate comments had the depth of a bumper sticker and the consistency of a weather report drawn in crayon. She finished by highlighting AOC's love for outrage, noting how every headline became a personal mission and every opposing voice turned into a major threat, turning public policy into a non-stop performance crafted for viral applause.
But if her pants had cuffs, she would have pretended to be in leg irons too. But real handcuffs, not so much. But that didn't stop her from pretending. And I hate it when people do this to me. When I ask people to put on handcuffs and they say, "I'll just pretend I have them on," I'd be like, "Sure, and I'll pretend to pay you after."
Megyn couldn't resist teasing AOC's constant references to her humble beginnings, saying AOC had stretched her old bartender job into the political version of a Marvel origin story, as if she invented hardship and turned it into a heroic title. She joked that AOC spoke about her past with so much drama that she half expected a slogan like, "From cocktails to Congress, a revolution in heels." When Greg jumped back in, he didn't slow down. He went after AOC's endless clashes with the the media, especially her ongoing battle with reality. He joked that AOC acted as if every question was an attack, treating each fact check like a personal insult. Greg compared her reactions to a toddler denied candy. Loud, indignant, and entirely convinced she was the victim of a great injustice. He mocked her claim of being the voice of the people, while rarely interacting with ordinary people, relying instead on Twitter activists, TikTok personalities, and climate protesters glued to sidewalks to stand in as her supporters. He also pointed out how strange it was that someone focused on working families spent so much time posing for magazine features. Greg even jabbed at her red carpet moments, describing her dramatic outfits as fashion statements, delivered with the subtlety of a jackhammer.
And respectfully, AOC. Well, that's real cute, except she only lived in the Bronx until she was age 5, when at best you're in usually kindergarten, maybe first grade. And she spent the rest of her childhood, 1 through 12th grade, in Yorktown Heights, which is Westchester. And by any measure, it is richer, nicer, and more white collar than the Bronx, with all due respect to my friends in the Bronx.
Greg said AOC tried to play a modern-day Robin Hood while wearing designer shoes, pulling attention away from real issues as she delivered speeches that sounded like tweets stretched through a thesaurus for extra shine. Megyn jumped back in to expose more contradictions, noting how AOC preached empowerment while insisting she had no power, demanded accountability while avoiding it, and talked endlessly about transparency while refusing interviews without pre-approved questions. Megyn argued that AOC mastered the switch between revolutionary and victim, choosing whichever version fit the camera angle of the moment. She explained how AOC turned complex political issues into quick slogans and treated anyone asking for details as if they were blocking progress, acting as though capitalism were a villain from a fantasy book and every economic question was another chance to blame billionaires instead of addressing real math. Megyn highlighted how AOC built movements with no structure and announced bold plans with no logistics, approaching politics like a college club. Plenty of posters, big excitement, and no follow-through once the energy faded and the pizza disappeared.
Of course, AOC was mocked on social media for imitating being handcuffed, which is a change from her usually being mocked for imitating a congresswoman. That's not even close to being as disgusting as I can be. She, in fact, was gingerly escorted away to a holding area where she kept up the phony display before finally raising her fist to supporters. She then crossed her wrists behind her back, again in the faux handcuffed position. It's as tall a tale as AOC nearly being killed on January.
Gutfeld jumped back in, calling AOC the queen of delayed revelations, joking that she always seemed to remember new trauma only after it turned into a trending topic guaranteed to bring attention. He mocked these sudden dramatic flashbacks, each one perfectly timed to match new bills or major news cycles, making them feel less like memories and more like staged performances. Greg said that if there were an award for political improv drama, AOC would win with ease and proudly thank herself during the speech. He also teased her views on international policy, saying her entire approach seemed to revolve around feeling sad, blaming America, demanding change, and offering no clear plan afterward. Greg imagined her trying to solve global issues with motivational quotes and vegan recipes, as if emotion alone could rewrite world problems. Then Megyn stepped in to break down AOC's shift from fiery activist to establishment favorite, all while pretending nothing had changed. She argued that AOC wanted the reputation of a rebel and the comfort of power at the same time, creating the political version of crashing a party and then loudly complaining about the music she chose herself.
And now some of her schoolmates, separate and apart from Benny, are weighing in on her claims. I'll get to the Benny thing in one second, but there was a piece in the New York Post talking about how she's embarrassing herself. She's embarrassing herself now with this Bronx girl.
Megyn mocked AOC's endless photo ops, her carefully staged outrage, and the pattern of controversies that always ended with a dramatic video followed by a fundraising link. She said AOC had turned her seat in Congress into a long-running performance series, with each episode starring her as the misunderstood hero fighting reality itself. Both Gutfeld and Kelly agreed that AOC wasn't an unexpected political breakthrough. She was a polished brand, packaged to appear authentic, marketed as a revolution and powered more by Wi-Fi than real results. They didn't view her as dangerous, but as predictable, like a script filled with costume changes and a protest sign paired with designer boots. Greg joked that if you gave AOC a full week to write a bill, she'd return with a spoken word poem and a playlist, and he imagined her trying to pass legislation using glitter pens and TikTok clips. He argued she didn't represent the future. She represented the moment politics chose image over substance. Megyn ended her roast by saying AOC's biggest challenge wouldn't be criticism but time itself, because eventually slogans fade, hashtags lose momentum, and people begin demanding real results. That's when AOC would learn that likes don't pass laws, retweets don't fix infrastructure, and emotional videos can't replace actual work.
AOC was on 60 Minutes last night. Quite a feat for a newcomer. Must be all her great new ideas.
People are going to have to start paying their fair share in taxes. Once you get to like the tippy tops, on your $10 millionth dollar, sometimes you see tax rates as high as 60 or 70%.
What an expression. Now, the real story isn't AOC's very old ideas. It's the media's gushy view of her. Even with her old ideas, she gets on 60.
They both made it clear the roast wasn't ending soon because AOC was still performing, still gathering applause from people who hadn't bothered to look at the script behind her show. And as long as she kept talking, Gutfeld and Kelly would be there sharpening their jokes and sipping coffee like they were preparing for the next act of an endless play. Greg jumped in again with full energy, saying AOC's biggest political accomplishment so far seemed to be turning every policy discussion into a full episode of theatrical politics. He described it as a production filled with props, costumes, and speeches that always ended with applause from people who didn't fully understand what she said. He joked that AOC could turn something as simple as a pothole complaint into a national debate about feelings, inequality, and whether the pavement itself had privilege, turning even the smallest problem into a dramatic national crisis.
Let's check in on AOC and see what she has to say.
Any quick reaction on what's going on with Elon Musk and President Trump on Twitter right now?
Oh man, the girls are fighting, aren't they? I think this breakup we've been seeing a long time coming, but we'll see what the impacts are of it legislatively.
Okay. You're so cool referring to them as the girls. She's above it all, Ben. That's what she's trying to telegraph. You see, she's the adult in the room, the one out there who does a preacher accent, and she leans into her fake Latina accent. And like, she's the adult in the...
Greg then targeted her idea of leadership, saying that whenever a real crisis appeared, AOC arrived late, unprepared, and dramatically over the top, like a firefighter showing up to a burning building with only a scented candle and a vlog camera to record her reaction. He argued she seemed more focused on crafting a storyline than solving a real issue, while her supporters watched each moment like entertainment. Megyn followed with another precise jab, calling out AOC's habit of moralizing every topic while ignoring the practical steps needed to fix anything. She said AOC acted like the kind of leader who pressured others to recycle a single straw while flying private to her next speaking event. Megyn mocked AOC's selective outrage, noting how she exploded over online trends while avoiding the constant, unglamorous responsibilities of actual governing. Kelly ended with a sharp line, saying AOC's greatest fear wasn't being wrong. It was becoming irrelevant because in her world, silence isn't reflection, it's defeat. And as long as cameras, controversy, and carefully rehearsed reactions exist, AOC will keep talking, whether anyone is still listening or not.